cogwriter.com. Please visit cogwriter.com for all the links to source materials cited in this presentation. War, food prices, and taking away the peace in Ukraine and Europe. The Associated Press reported the following. On February 26, 2022, Kiev, Ukraine. Russian troops closed in on Ukraine's capital Saturday after a night of explosions and street fighting sent Kiev residents seeking shelter or fleeing the city. The country's leader claimed Ukraine's forces had repulsed the assault and vowed to keep up the struggle. The real fighting for Kiev is ongoing, President Vladimir Zelensky said in a video message, accusing Russia in a video of hitting infrastructure and civilian targets. "We will win," he said. Central Kiev appeared quiet Saturday, and skirmishes reported on the edge of the city suggested that small Russian units were trying to clear a path for the main forces. Britain's defense ministry said Saturday that the bulk of Russian forces were 19 miles, 30 kilometers, from the middle of the city. Ukraine's health minister reported Saturday that 198 people, including 3 children, have been killed and more than 1,000 others have been wounded during Europe's largest ground offensive since World War II. It was unclear whether the figure included both military and civilian casualties. The conflict has driven thousands of Ukrainians from their homes in search of safety. UN officials said more than 120,000 Ukrainians have left the country for Poland, Moldova, and other neighboring nations. It was unclear in the fog of war how much of Ukraine was still under Ukrainian control and how much Russian forces have seized. Western governments claim stiff Ukrainian resistance had slowed the Russian advance, and Russia does not control Ukraine's skies. In addition to Kiev, the Russian assault appeared to focus on Ukraine's coastline, stretching from the Black Sea port of Odessa in the west near the border with Romania to the Azov seaport in Mariupol in the east. If the Russian troops succeeded, Ukraine will be cut off from access to all of its seaports, which are vital for its economy. In Mariupol, Ukrainian soldiers guarded bridges and blocked people from the seashore area amid concerns the Russian Navy could launch an assault from the sea. The Russian military said Friday that they claimed control of Mariupol, about 35 kilometers or 22 miles inland from the Sea of Azov. Western officials believe Russian President Vladimir Putin is determined to overthrow Ukraine's government and replace it with a regime of his own. The invasion represented Putin's boldest effort yet to redraw the map of Europe and revive Moscow's Cold War-era influence. Zelensky issued a defiant video recorded on a downtown Kiev street early Saturday, saying he remained in the city and that it claims the Ukrainian military would put down arms were false. "We aren't going to lay down weapons. We will protect our country," the Ukrainian president said. "Our weapon is our truth, and our truth is that it is our land, our country, our children, and we will defend all of that." We now see a war happening between Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine's response brought the following to mind, which is related to the gathering at Armageddon. "Proclaim this among the nations. Prepare for war. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, 'I am strong.' Assemble and come, all you nations, and gather together all around. Cause your mighty ones to go down there, O Lord." From Joel, 3rd chapter 9 through 11. No, I am not saying what is happening now is the start of Armageddon. Only that Ukraine, which is militarily weaker than Russia, keeps asserting it is strong. Thus far, the resistance by Ukraine reminds me a little bit of what happened in the USA Civil War in the 19th century. The North was much stronger and richer than the South. The North expected to win relatively quickly, and while history records that the North won, the cost to the North was very high and much of the South was devastated. As far as Ukraine goes, people have been killed, buildings destroyed, and many are fleeing. Civilians suffer as the Ukraine war rages on. 26th of February 2022. As Russia's assault on Ukraine continues, civilians are scrambling to flee the country. Others are holed up in bomb shelters and even subway stations. Jesus warned of a time of wars, rumors of war and famines in Matthew 24, 4 through 8. The book of Revelation has the following. When he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature saying, "Come and see." Another horse, fiery red, went out, and it was granted to the one who sat on it to take peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another. And there was given to him a great sword. And when he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come and see." So I looked, and behold, a black horse, and he who sat on it had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine." Revelation 3:6, 3 through 6. Consider that the opening of the second seal, Revelation 6, 3 and 4, is to result in less peace on the earth. While this is commonly called the red horse, or horseman of war, that is not quite what is stated. Notice that he takes peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another. Could it be that events in 2020, such as COVID-19, are consistent with taking peace from the earth? The literal Greek here for peace in Revelation 6 can be interpreted to mean taking away prosperity as well. See BibleHub.com. COVID-19 has, to a degree, done that. People are afraid, or at least uneasy to a degree, we have not seen around the world any time in the 21st century. Around the world, people are afraid. The fleeing of normalcy is gone for many around the globe. Consider that the travel restrictions are basically because of fear, and often politics. The media and government officials are saying everything will not go back to how it was, and that we need to accept what they have called the new normal. Speculatively, this could be related to the opening of the second seal. Not since World War II have we seen anything affect the entire planet so much. Now, in Ukraine there is not peace. Reverberations are being felt around the world and especially in Europe. Furthermore, we have already seen food inflation. Last October, the Continuing Church of God, CCOG, put out the following video on our Bible News Prophecy YouTube channel related to that. The link is in Cogwriter. Food inflation in the third horseman of the apocalypse. Notice also that stores in Kiev, Ukraine, are running out of food. People in the Middle East, India, and elsewhere are concerned that they will have food disruptions, higher prices, and/or shortages. Ukrainian crisis. War in world's breadbasket has big buyers hunting for wheat. February 26, 2022, Russia's invasion of Ukraine is threatening shockwaves through 2 of the world's staple grain markets, prompting countries that rely on imports from the region to start seeking alternative supplies and heightening concerns about global food inflation and hunger. Grain exports from Russia will probably be on hold for at least the next couple of weeks. The local association said on Friday, after turmoil erupted in the Black Sea, Ukrainian ports have been closed since Thursday. That means the war has temporarily cut off a breadbasket that accounts for more than a quarter of global wheat trade and nearly a fifth of corn. Major importers are already looking at their options to buy from elsewhere, and prices for both grains have swung wildly in the past 2 days. The disruptions come at a time when global crop prices have already soared to records, while global hunger has surged dramatically in the past 2 years. Several Arab countries, including Yemen and Tunisia, have been looking for alternative ways to meet their fuel and food needs in light of the Russian invasion. London-based Al Arabi Al Jadid newspaper reported, Abd al-Salim and Al-Aghbari, a grain trader, said that the Yemeni market depends mainly on wheat imported from Russia and Ukraine. And Tunisia, which imports about 80% of its grain from Ukraine, concerns are growing following the outbreak of the war. Both Russia and Ukraine are key suppliers of the world's wheat, barley, and other staple grains. The eastern regions of Ukraine, which are most vulnerable to a Russian attack, contain its most productive farmland. Amid the ongoing invasion of Ukraine by Russia, a sustained rise in oil and food prices would adversely affect Asia's economies through higher inflation, weaker current account and fiscal balances, and a pressure on economic growth. India, Thailand, and the Philippines are being seen as the biggest losers. There are many ramifications of the war between Russia and Ukraine. If, for example, instead of authorizing this special military operation, Vladimir Putin would have basically stopped with the recognition of the groups in Donetsk and Luhansk in the Donbass, the world would have complained and probably would have basically put up with that. But now, even though Russia has shown restraint and wants to minimize Ukrainian casualties, its invasion into Ukraine is alienating many in Ukraine that would have been more supportive of Russia. Since Vladimir Putin has a reputation of fighting and putting down resistance until he wins, see a Newsweek.com article, more deaths are expected. This invasion is turning ordinary citizens into soldiers and is scaring many nations in Europe, scaring them enough that they will be more willing to spend more and cooperate more militarily. In addition to the humanitarian issues with the war in Ukraine, this is functioning as a wake-up call for Europe to arm. Notice something from Ireland and Germany. The invasion of Ukraine by Russia this week has opened up a fissure in the never-again bedrock that contributed to a historically long period of peace in Europe. The short-term outcome of this conflict is not too hard to predict, as it relies on brutal mathematics. Russia knows that no other military alliance will intervene on behalf of Ukraine. Its military might is so overwhelming it will be sufficient to overrun the country. Neutrality is no longer the comfort blanket it once was. Globalization, increased interdependency between countries as asymmetric warfare perpetuated by non-state actors, make it harder to do a Pontius Pilate on it militarily. The debate in the Dial and on European security this week, albeit held 24 hours before the invasion, illustrated the lack of deep thinking about our neutrality and our status in the world. For one, we are now a member of the European Union. The reality is it is as much a political union as an economic one. In that context, there is an ongoing debate about European defense, mainly manifested around PESCO, the European Union's vehicle for permanent structured cooperation. Ukraine confronts us with a different proposition. What do we do when one of our neighbors is attacked by a dictatorship? What if Putin, in a moment of madness, decided to annex Estonia to gain more access to the Baltic Sea? Now, Estonia is a member of NATO, so that's a big deterrent. But what if it wasn't? What would the European Union do if one of its non-NATO members were to be attacked by a bully state? What would Ireland do? a top general of the German army, Alphonse Maes, sent shockwaves through social media on Thursday when he posted an unusually frank appraisal on his LinkedIn page. You wake up in the morning and realize there is war in Europe. What is the German military doing now? Meanwhile, German Defense Minister Christine Lambrecht has announced Thursday that her ministry had triggered national alert measures. Lambrecht added that the population could see more military movements in public areas in the coming days and that there may be restrictions in the transport sector, as transport capacities on land, at sea, and in the air must be kept available for military purposes. PESCO is a pan-European military organization. Because of the situation in Ukraine, for the first time since it formed in 2017, it is taking certain steps. Activation of first capability developed under European Union PESCO points to the strength of cooperation in cyber defense. For the first time, a capability developed within the framework of European Union's Permanent Structured Cooperation PESCO project has been formally activated in an operational context. The Lithuania-coordinated Cyber Rapid Response Teams and Mutual Assistance in Cybersecurity, CRRTS, typically consist of 8 through 12 cybersecurity experts pooled from 6 participating EU member states: Croatia, Estonia, Lithuania, the Netherlands, Poland, and Romania, who can provide assistance in the event of a cyber incident. This week, the CRRTs were activated following a request from Ukraine to help the country's institution facing cybersecurity challenges. Yes, perhaps a small step, but a real one by the Europeans. Despite what many think, the Bible shows that Europe will end up with a great army, many ships, Daniel 11:40, and be so successful militarily, Daniel 11:39, that the world will marvel, Revelation 13:3 and 4. Crises such as wars and rumors of wars, food shortage, food inflation, civil unrest, economic problems, and one or more future pandemics will further propel Europe to support a dictatorial leader that the Bible calls the Beast. Revelation 13:1 through 10, 17, 12, and 13. What is happening in Ukraine will help motivate Europe to make moves in that direction faster than many think. This entry was posted on Saturday, February 26, 2022 at 9 a.m. and is filed under Prophecy.